The desperate plea. The great assembly hall of the Zephyrian Alliance trembled with the weight of desperation. 500 delegates from across 12 star systems sat in stunned silence as the holographic display showed the same horrifying images over and over again. Worlds that had flourished for millennia now lay barren, their surfaces stripped clean of all organic matter. High Counselor Lyra stood at the center podium, her usually vibrant blue skin now pale with exhaustion. The elegant Zephyrian had not slept in days, not since the reports began flooding in from the Outer Rim territories. Her voice cracked as she addressed the assembly. Fellow beings of the Alliance, we face extinction. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. In the past 60 standard days, we have lost 7 complete star systems to the entity we now call the Void Swarm. Our finest scientists estimate we have perhaps 40 days before they reach our core worlds. Ambassador Kex of the Helix Collective raised one of his 4 arms. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected the horror on the display screens. High Counselor, surely our combined fleets can mount an effective defense. The Alliance Navy has over 3,000 vessels. We tried that at the Meridian system, replied Admiral Voss, her tentacles writhing with barely contained anguish. 2,000 ships, the largest fleet in our history. The Void Swarm consumed them all. Not destroyed, consumed. The biomass of our crews, the organic components of our ships. Everything was absorbed and turned against us. The assembly erupted in panicked voices speaking dozens of languages. The universal translators worked overtime as fear spread through the gathered representatives like a plague. High Counselor Lyra raised her hand for silence. There is one option we have not discussed, she said quietly. The hall fell silent again, sensing the gravity in her tone. The restricted archives contained files on species that were deemed too dangerous for inclusion in the Alliance. Deathworld species. The reaction was immediate and visceral. Several delegates stood up in protest. Minister Zan of the Crystalline World stepped forward, his body glowing with agitation. Absolutely not. Those creatures are monsters. They were quarantined for the safety of all civilized life in the galaxy. What choice do we have? Lyra shot back. Our peaceful ways, our advanced technology, our diplomatic solutions, none of it matters against an enemy that sees us only as food. Perhaps it takes monsters to fight monsters. Dr. Naya, the Alliance's chief xenobiologist, activated her personal display. I have been studying the restricted files. There is one species in particular human designation, from a world called Earth. Their planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. The number sent a chill through the assembly. Most Alliance worlds were Class 1 or 2 on the danger scale. A Class 12 was theoretically unsurvivable. Their atmosphere contains 21% oxygen, creating an environment so reactive it would kill most of us within minutes. Dr. Naya continued. The surface experiences temperature variations of over 100 degrees. Massive storms capable of leveling cities occur regularly. The gravity is nearly double what most of us consider safe, and the native life forms. She paused, checking her data. They have creatures that exist solely to hunt and kill other creatures. The humans call them predators. What about the humans themselves? Asked Ambassador Kex, though he seemed afraid to hear the answer. They are apex predators, Dr. Naya replied. They evolved from persistent hunters who would chase prey for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their entire physiology is designed for endurance, adaptability, and survival. They can run for hours without stopping, go days without food, and their brains are wired for tactical thinking and problem-solving under pressure. The assembly was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, Elder Jax of the Ancient Ones spoke. His species had existed for over 10,000 years, and his words carried great weight. Perhaps, he said slowly, we have been thinking about this incorrectly. We see the humans as dangerous because they are predators. But consider this, what if they are predators who choose to protect rather than consume? High Counselor Lyra looked around the assembly. all in favor of sending a distress signal to Earth. The vote was closer than anyone had expected, but it passed. Within the hour, a message was transmitted toward a small blue world in a remote sector of the galaxy. The message was simple: help us survive. 3 days later, something impossible happened. Long-range sensors detected a single ship dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of Zephyrian territory. The vessel was sleek, but clearly built for function over form. Dark hull plating bore the scars of countless battles, and its weapon arrays were unlike anything in the Alliance databases. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike, studying the tactical display with calm professional interest. At 35, she was young for a starship captain, but her dark eyes held the steady gaze of someone who had seen combat and prevailed. Her crew was handpicked, each one a veteran of the Outer Colony Wars. "Sensors show we're being scanned," reported Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb from the tactical station. The tall man's cybernetic arm was a souvenir from the Battle of New Canberra. "Multiple ships converging on our position." "Expected," Chen replied. "They want to get a look at the monsters they called for help." She turned to her communications officer. "Ensign Park, open a channel to the lid ship." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Zephyrian vessel. The alien crew stood frozen, staring at the humans with obvious fear. High Counselor Lyra stepped forward, trying to maintain diplomatic composure despite her trembling hands. "Captain Chen, thank you for responding to our distress call. We are honored by your presence." Chen's expression remained neutral. "Cut the pleasantries, Counselor. We monitored your transmissions on the way here. You're facing something called the Void Swarm, and you're losing badly. What exactly are we dealing with?" The directness caught Lyra off guard. In Alliance culture, such conversations would begin with hours of formal greetings and protocol exchanges. They are a parasitic species that consumes organic matter and incorporates it into their collective. "They've destroyed 7 of our star systems." "Show me." The tactical display updated with the latest intelligence on the Void Swarm. Chen studied it with the same intensity she might give to a chess problem. Her officers gathered around, each one analyzing the data from their own specialty. "Hive mind structure," observed Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist. "Individual units have no independent thought. They're all controlled by a central consciousness." "Biomechanical ships," added Chief Engineer David Murphy. "They're not building vessels, they're growing them. That's why conventional weapons aren't effective." "Look at their movement patterns," pointed out Lieutenant Commander Webb. "They're not using military tactics. They're behaving like a swarm of insects following pheromone trails." Chen nodded. "Because that's exactly what they are. They've never faced organized resistance before. They just overwhelmed through numbers and absorption." High Counselor Lyra listened to this analysis with growing amazement. In less than 10 minutes, the humans had developed insights that had eluded Alliance scientists for months. "Captain Chen," she said carefully, "our projections show the swarm will reach our core worlds within 40 days. Even with your ship's assistance, I fear the odds are insurmountable." Chen turned to look directly at her, and Lyra saw something in those human eyes that made her step back. It wasn't cruelty or bloodlust. It was the absolute certainty of a predator that had found its prey. "Counselor, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're trying to defend against them, which means you're letting them set the terms of engagement. We don't defend against swarms, we hunt them." The word hunt sent a visible shiver through the Zephyrian crew. In their prey species evolution, being hunted was the ultimate nightmare. "But how?" Lyra asked. "They outnumber us thousands to 1. Numbers don't matter if you're smart about it," Chen replied. "Every hive mind has a weakness. Find the queen, kill the queen, and the rest falls apart. Dr. Vasquez, what do you need to locate their central control unit?" "I'll need samples of their biomechanical tissue and data on their communication frequencies," the xenobiologist replied without hesitation. "Murphy, can we modify our weapons to be effective against organic hulls?" "Already working on it, Captain. I'm thinking thermal charges and chemical dispersants. Burn them from the inside out. Chen turned back to High Counselor Lyra. We'll need detailed maps of their current positions and movement patterns, and I want to talk to any survivors who've had direct contact with the swarm. Of course, but Captain. Lyra hesitated. Why are you helping us? Your species has no obligation to the Alliance. You could simply leave us to our fate. The hunt begins. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the war room aboard the UES Thunderstrike, surrounded by holographic displays showing every detail of Void Swarm movement patterns. 3 days of intensive analysis had revealed what the Alliance had missed for months. The enemy wasn't as invincible as they appeared. Their weakness is their strength, Dr. Elena Vasquez explained to the assembled Alliance officers who had joined the tactical briefing. High Counselor Lyra watched in fascination as the human xenobiologist manipulated the three-dimensional display. The hive mind gives them perfect coordination, but it also makes them completely dependent on centralized control. Ambassador Kex leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the tactical data. But how do we find this central control unit among thousands of ships? We make them show us, replied Lieutenant Commander Marcus Webb. The cybernetic officer highlighted specific patterns in the swarm's movements. Watch how they react when they encounter resistance. The command ships always pull back to a safe distance while the drones do the fighting. Chief Engineer David Murphy activated his own display. I've been analyzing the whole samples we recovered from the Kepler system. The biomechanical components are sophisticated, but they have one critical vulnerability. They require specific chemical conditions to maintain cellular cohesion. English, please, said Admiral Voss, her tentacles writhing with confusion. Murphy grinned. They're part plant, part machine. Change the chemical environment around them, and they fall apart like a house of cards. I've developed a compound that should do exactly that. Captain Chen studied the faces around her. The Alliance officers were beginning to understand that humans approached warfare differently than anyone they had ever encountered. Where the Alliance saw impossible odds, the humans saw a puzzle to be solved. Here's the plan, Chen announced. We're going to use their own tactics against them. The swarm expects their enemies to run or hide. Instead, we're going hunting. We hit their scouts, their forward elements, anything small enough to handle but valuable enough to force a response. That sounds extremely dangerous, High Counselor Lyra observed. Everything worth doing is dangerous, Chen replied. But we're not going in blind. Ensign Park has been monitoring their communications. Communications Officer Lisa Park, a young woman with cybernetic implants that enhanced her ability to process multiple data streams, activated her workstation. The swarm uses bioelectric signals for coordination. I've isolated the command frequencies. More importantly, I've figured out how to jam them. The implications hit the Alliance officers like a physical blow. If the drones could be cut off from their hive mind, they would be completely helpless. The jamming effect is limited range, Park continued. We'll need to get close enough to make it work. Very close. Chen nodded, which brings us to the most important part of the plan. We're not just going to defeat the Void Swarm. We're going to make sure they never threaten anyone again. How? Asked Elder Jacques, though something in his ancient eyes suggested he already suspected the answer. We're going to wipe them out completely, Chen said simply. Every ship, every drone, every trace of their existence. Total extinction. The Alliance officers fell silent. In their peaceful civilization, the concept of deliberately exterminating an entire species was almost incomprehensible. Yet, as they looked at the destruction the swarm had caused, they began to understand the human perspective. Captain, Admiral Voss said quietly, are you certain this is the only way? Chen's expression hardened. Admiral, these things don't negotiate. They don't show mercy. They don't stop consuming until there's nothing left to consume. The only language they understand is force, and the only way to protect the innocent is to eliminate the threat permanently. Dr. Vasquez brought up images of swarm-consumed worlds. The biological analysis is clear. They've absorbed the genetic material of hundreds of species. Every person they've consumed is now part of their collective consciousness, trapped in an eternal nightmare. Death would be a mercy for them. The weight of that revelation settled over the room. The Alliance had been thinking of the consumed populations as casualties of war. The reality was far worse. They were still alive, incorporated into the very thing that had destroyed their worlds. Then we end their suffering, High Counselor Lyra said with quiet determination. Captain Chen, the Alliance will support your plan completely. 12 hours later, the hunt began. The Void Swarm Scout Group was moving through the abandoned Rigel system, feeding on the remnants of organic matter left behind from their previous assault. 6 biomechanical vessels, each the size of a small moon, drifted through the debris field with the lazy confidence of apex predators in their own territory. They never saw the thunderstrike coming. The human ship dropped out of hyperspace directly above the largest scout vessel, moving at a velocity that should have been impossible. Captain Chen had used a gravity slingshot maneuver around the system's neutron star, building up kinetic energy that transformed her ship into a guided projectile. Weapons free, Chen ordered calmly. The Thunderstrike's arsenal was unlike anything the swarm had encountered. Instead of energy weapons that could be absorbed and redirected, the humans used kinetic impactors accelerated to significant fractions of light speed. The first salvo punched completely through the scout vessel's hull, creating perfectly round holes that vented atmosphere and biomatter into space. But the real surprise came next. As the kinetic rounds penetrated deep into the ship's organic core, they released Chief Murphy's chemical compound. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The biomechanical tissue began to dissolve, losing cellular cohesion as the carefully balanced chemical environment collapsed. Within minutes, the massive scout vessel was breaking apart from the inside out. Target 2, firing, reported Lieutenant Commander Webb. The second scout tried to raise its bioelectric shields, but Ensign Park was already jamming their communication frequencies. Cut off from the hive mind's coordination, the drone ship's systems began to fail. Its organic components, suddenly forced to operate independently, couldn't maintain basic life functions. It's like watching a body die when the brain stops working, Dr. Vasquez observed with clinical fascination. The remaining scouts tried to flee, but the Thunderstrike was faster and more maneuverable than anything in their experience. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. The entire engagement lasted less than 20 minutes. Sensor sweep shows no survivors, Webb reported. All 6 targets neutralized. Chen studied the tactical display, watching for the swarm's response. Now we wait. She didn't have to wait long. Within hours, long-range sensors detected massive movement from the swarm's main concentration. Hundreds of ships were breaking off from their feeding grounds and converging on the Rigel system. They're coming, Admiral Voss observed unnecessarily. Good, Chen replied. That's exactly what we want. The Alliance officers looked at her as if she had lost her mind. The approaching swarm fleet outnumbered them by more than 1,000 to 1. Captain, High Counselor Lyra said carefully, perhaps we should withdraw and reconsider our strategy. Counselor, the first rule of hunting is patience. We've made them angry, which means they're going to make mistakes. Angry prey always makes mistakes. As the swarm fleet approached, its formation revealed exactly what Chen had been hoping for. At the center of the massive armada, protected by layers of drone ships, were 3 vessels that were clearly different from the rest. They were larger, more complex, and their bioelectric signatures showed they were the source of the coordination signals controlling the entire fleet. There, Dr. Vasquez pointed at the tactical display. The Queen ships. If we can destroy those 3 vessels, the entire swarm will lose cohesion. How do we get through 1,000 drone ships? Asked Ambassador Kex. Chen smiled, and for the first time since meeting her, the Alliance officers found the expression genuinely frightening. We don't go through them. We go around them. The plan she outlined was so audacious that several Alliance officers initially thought she was joking. The Thunderstrike would use the system's asteroid belt as cover, approaching the swarm fleet from an unexpected angle. Meanwhile, the Alliance vessels would create a diversion, drawing the drones away from the Queen ships. "It's suicide," Admiral Voss protested. "You'll be outnumbered 1,000 to 1. "Numbers don't matter if they can't coordinate," Chen replied. "Once we start jamming their communications, those drones will be flying blind. And we have one more advantage: they don't expect us to win." As the Thunderstrike disappeared into the asteroid field, the Alliance fleet moved into position. High Counselor Lyra found herself in command of the largest military operation in Alliance history, and she was terrified. "Remember," Captain Chen's voice crackled over the communication system, "you don't need to win this fight. You just need to survive long enough for us to reach the target." The swarm fleet entered the Rigel system like a plague of locusts, their biomechanical ships pulsing with malevolent energy. The first wave of drones immediately engaged the Alliance vessels, which began a fighting retreat toward the system's outer edge. Hidden in the asteroid belt, the Thunderstrike moved like a ghost through the floating rocks. Chen's crew worked with the precision of a surgical team, each one knowing their role in the desperate gambit they were about to attempt. "Target acquired," Webb reported. "We have a clear approach to the center Queen ship." "Dr. Vasquez, are you ready?" Chen asked. The xenobiologist nodded grimly. She had spent the past day developing a biological weapon specifically designed to target the swarm's hive mind. It would be delivered directly into the Queen ship's organic core, spreading like a virus through their bioelectric network. "Ensign Park, maximum jamming on my mark." "Aye, Captain." "Jamming systems at full power." Chen took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for, everything the Alliance had sacrificed, came down to the next few minutes. "All hands, this is the captain. We are humanity's answer to the darkness between the stars. We are the protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. Today, we hunt monsters." The Thunderstrike burst from the asteroid field at maximum acceleration, diving straight toward the heart of the swarm fleet. As Ensign Park activated the jamming systems, chaos erupted throughout the enemy formation. Drones collided with each other as their coordination failed. Ships spun out of control as their organic pilots lost connection to the hive mind. The Thunderstrike's weapons spoke with the voice of human determination. Kinetic rounds and chemical weapons tore through the Queen ship's defenses, penetrating deep into its organic core. Dr. Vasquez's biological weapons spread through the vessel's neural networks like wildfire. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. As the first Queen ship died, its death screams echoed through the bioelectric network connecting the entire swarm. The other two Queen ships tried to compensate, but they were already infected by the spreading biological weapon. One by one, the massive vessels began to convulse and break apart. The thousands of drone ships, suddenly cut off from all central control, simply stopped functioning. Some drifted helplessly through space. Others began attacking each other as their basic programming conflicted. Within an hour, the mighty Void Swarm was nothing more than floating debris. Captain Chen stood on her bridge, watching the destruction with grim satisfaction. The Alliance fleet approached slowly, their sensors confirming what seemed impossible. "All swarm vessels neutralized," Admiral Voss reported, her voice filled with awe. "Bioelectric signatures show complete neural network collapse. They're all dead." High Counselor Lyra appeared on the main screen, tears streaming down her blue face. "Captain Chen, how can we ever repay this debt?" Chen considered the question seriously. "By remembering what you learned here today. The universe has predators and prey, but it also has protectors. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from choosing to shield others rather than consuming them." She paused, looking out at the debris field that had once been humanity's enemy. The Void Swarm forgot that lesson. They thought being the apex predator meant they could take whatever they wanted. They never considered that there might be other apex predators who had learned to be something more. As the Alliance fleet began rescue operations for their own damaged vessels, Dr. Vasquez approached Captain Chen with her final report. The biological weapon worked perfectly, she said. The swarm's entire genetic library has been corrupted. Every absorbed species, every consumed consciousness has been freed. They're finally at peace. Chen nodded. And the threat? Permanently eliminated. The swarm's reproductive capacity has been completely destroyed. There will be no more of them, ever. Captain Chen looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in this galaxy, peaceful species could sleep safely tonight, because monsters had been reminded that they were not the apex predators they thought they were. The Deathworlders had answered the call, and the hunt was over.